Do-do.
Turning the vision into a mission. This is Global Mission of Peace with the GoldFish Report number 9. I am Radagast, and I'm here with Louisa, our media outreach.
Hello.
Sanjay, the wonder from down under.
Howdy.
Sherry B, working for your right to know.
Good day. Happy to be with you here.
And the warm heart and keen intellect of the ambassador.
Thank you very much.
And our special guest, Kev Baker.
It's an absolute pleasure to be with you all tonight.
Thank you very much, Kev, that you joined us. And could you talk about, Louis, what we're going to talk about today?
Yes, I wanted to, first I have a few announcements to make. We have a birthday. We would like to wish Simon Parks a very happy birthday today. We're not going to ask your age, but hope you have a great day. We also have we would like to remind our viewers that you can find the other Goldfish reports at thegoldfishreport.com. You can visit our website there. And also we would like to give a mention to, we had Randy Kramer on as a guest earlier in the week, and what we would like to let everyone know, which we forgot to mention on the show, is that Randy has a consulting business, and he has a website which I forgot to mention, so it was my fault for not mentioning it, and it's called earthcitizenconsulting.org. And you can go and support Randy's work by visiting his website. And if you like the kind of interviews that Randy is providing, and if you would like more of that information, and if you'd like Randy to be available more for people, you can go to his website and support his work. And you can make donations on the website, and you can help bring this disclosure information out by supporting his work. And with that, we'd like to talk about, we have Kev Baker with us today, joining us, and we're going to talk about the refugee crisis that's going on, and there's really kind of two sides to this. I mean, we're really focusing, I think the conversation is absolutely surrounding the picture of this little boy, and it's many different issues and many reasons why this little boy has become the face of this entire, not just this crisis, but all the refugee crises and what's behind them. So this little boy, who should have been building sandcastles on the beach, was known, his photo was taken instead in his gravesite, and this has enraged the world. And although this has happened many, many times, there's been little children who have been killed almost on a daily basis from war, and from these senseless wars, I should say. This little boy just did happen to captivate the world at this point. But what's sad is really what's behind it. What's sad is why this picture and how this picture is being exploited as propaganda. And this is what we're going to try to talk about on the show. And with that, I'm going to pass this over to the ambassador.
Yes, good day. I'm going to share some photos here today. And with these photos, I will, start with doing some initial statements into, the crisis and what's going on. Okay. And we start here with this, picture here of a victim, okay, of the migrations. And then you see the media sitting of all the victims of terror. Okay. Now people will say, which terror I'm talking about? I'm talking about the terror that the media, okay, is very much responsible for. And also our nations, both European Union, United Kingdom, and United States and Israel, okay? And what we need to relate to also is not only that, we need to relate to this. This is other kids that have lost their lives, totally in vain by the campaign and terror responsive money that has been coming in. Here's more kids that are being killed. This is how, the cities is being bombarded, where this casualty is coming from. And here is people that has lost their homes, okay, and lost their children. And here again is another explosion, and you see the kids running away. And here is from the refugee crisis. Here you have, the face of how it looks in Europe today, okay? And here you see, the total chaos in the cities that is completely bombarded to pieces. And now there's over 4 million displaced people and a lot of dead people here just lined up, okay? And here you see one little child that the father has lost. And here again you have the refugee crisis here in Europe. And then here we have another little picture that I want to discuss a little bit more carefully. Okay, this picture is not from Syria. This is not from Iraq. This photo is taken in Donbass, in Ukraine, okay? But this is something that the media doesn't want to talk about, okay? And this is also something that we need to put attention to, okay? And so with these images in mind, we will start this discussion, okay? And what I would like to say to start with this is that about 4 years ago, I had a discussion with a lady in the United Nations, and I was talking about this upcoming crisis already 4 years ago. And we were talking about how we're supposed to be able to secure a good living for these people when their the countries was completely traumatized, and how we could build cities of refuge for them. And this is something that also I wanted to do an outreach today, that anyone would listen to this and have suggestions who want to join the battle with me and the family in creating new homes for these people and a new future for these people, please reach out and submit whatever you can submit to help out with their sources, with if it's technologies of, knowledge or whatever it is, even funding, if that's what people want to do. Any way you can do to contribute to help these people to actually have a better life in a place where they can, stay until they can move back to the countries where they come from. Okay. Now, the important thing here, which is, an essential problem, okay, is that we had this little boy, and suddenly now the guard goes down, and suddenly Europe is flooded with refugees. Majority of these, refugees are 70% young male. Already some countries has already the nations as a capita of rape based on this, migrants that has coming already from these countries in the past. We saw today that it was a shipment with arms that was intercepted that's supposed to go to these refugees. And I was wondering why they're supposed to have all these arms. And we saw the Kuwaiti leader stating that he don't want to have any refugees from Syria because they're all psychologically sick and they don't want to have sick people in their country. But these people is of course traumatized. You can see the photos. Who else wouldn't be traumatized, even full with hate and revenge feelings against the people that is behind these criminal acts, which is, actually United States, European Union, and Israel. Now, what can we do to secure our borders? Okay, the borders is basically all open now, and people is flooding in without any compliance on who these people are. We have no clue if they've been trained in training camps. We have no proofs that these people maybe are not from ISIS or from the Taliban or from any other organization. Maybe this is the grand scale that I heard 1 year ago after a Bilderberg meeting that 100,000 refugees supposed to be taken in during this year. And now I see it's happening. And of course, when they are planning things, they're planning things in a very vicious manner. So I think that we're standing into a huge humanitarian crisis, probably the biggest humanitarian crisis since the Second World War. And my main agenda now I'm reaching out again because I did it to the Pope and he gave an answer, and we have a meeting, the Jubilee meeting there in United Nations on the 15th and 16th. And now we come up with a new guideline to the Pope and to everyone else that is there. I think it's time, okay, that United States and United Kingdom will share 50% of all these refugees, okay? And the ones that's supposed to pay for that will be Tony Blair, okay, Cameron, and George Bush Jr., George Bush Sr., Jeb Bush, he can contribute to because they're all family. And at the same time, also Soros and many of these other criminals, and Obama and the Clintons. The Clinton Foundation can take all the money that they've been trading on PPP and turn into doing real projects in making small refuge cities in America where they can take care of this. And also the military complex should actually take part in paying for this displacement of these people, because this is their wars that they have created in trying to enrage China and Russia and Iran into a war. Okay, and the crisis is not now so wide, both of Syria and Iraq and in Yemen and in other African countries where they're raising the terror range. And basically, it's now time for us to take responsibility. These people are in crisis, that's for sure. But how do we know who are our friends, and who do we know that they are not here to revenge for what we did? So we need to put all these things into attention, but actually helping these people. But it's time that the responsible people take their responsibility. Now the Pope is opening up his doors for the Vatican and for the churches to help these people. And I'm very much thankful for that he took that step after my last discussion. But at the same time, it's time for the criminals to actually pay for their crimes. Okay, it's, you know, and the worst way sometimes is when it hurts in the wallet. Let them actually physically pay for the cities of refuge. It's time that America and United Kingdom, okay, and Europe should also pay for the transporting of the things because of their silent consent. And also I have another plan here. I have heard some rumors that Russia is coming into Syria. And I would very much recommend that maybe Russia, together with China and Chechnya, the leader of Chechnya, would clean up this mess with ISIS in both Iraq and in Syria. Okay, I think they're the only capable people to do so, because they have not been involved in creating this mess, and at the same time they have an interest, as everyone else, into securing the world, and they have a good track record in dealing with the terrorists branches that was in the Caucasus in the past. So let them do that. Let the Muslims who really care for peace interact. Now it's a shame to see the Gulf states just taking the beautiful girls from the refugee camps and putting them in their harems. But other than that, they don't want to touch any of one of these people or have any form of responsibility. This reminds me of a time when we have Intifada, and Palestine was being bombarded, and the West Bank, and basically the only one that issued visas and allowed them to come in was Hugo Chavez. And Hugo Chavez originally is a Jew, but he's a Christian by faith, and he was the only one caring for the Palestinian people. Now it would be very interesting to see how the international community, if the United Nations for the first time in the world history could actually do something concrete during these days of the Jubilee meeting and find a proper solution to deal with the criminals behind these wars, have them arrested and have them paying for this, and basically allow these people to come and being treated and painted by their aggressors, which is United Kingdom and United States. Okay, so I think this is a very, very important part of the thing that I see. As you see that it has been a lot of fights and it's a lot of riots all over Europe, and I think it's going to just be worse. I think we're going to have a lot of more terrible things happening here. And so this is an immediate thing that we need to take in consideration. This is a plan that was put to make Europe be destroyed from inside out by migration. Okay, and this was a plan that was a very known Zionist rabbi that put this plan together about 9 years ago, and now we're seeing it being fulfilled straight in front of our eyes. So it's time now for us as people to come together, help these refugees, but also make sure that the people that are guilty for these crimes against humanity have to take its own responsibility. Now I know that you have been talking with people, in Ukraine, and I have people there too, but you've been talking about this crisis yourself. What is your insight of this horrible disaster that's coming?
Well, let's deal with this Syrian refugee crisis first of all. Now, this has been totally orchestrated, and they've even scripted the fact that these refugees would be coming back in February in the UK, with the Daily Mail, one of the mainstream rags here, reporting that ISIS were going to send 500,000 migrants flooding into Europe. Now, there's a couple of ways we have to look at this, because all these people that are being displaced right now, it's in no small part due to the fact that the Arab Spring was orchestrated right from the start. And even Colonel Gaddafi himself, before his demise, warned that if we didn't get a handle on this, the Mediterranean would turn into a sea of chaos. And now what they're doing is they're actually using that sea of chaos for problem, reaction, solution. Because here in the UK, it was back in 2013 they tried to accuse Assad of gassing his own people. And we have to remember, it doesn't matter how many times they keep saying ISIS, ISIL, any of these groups, it's always Assad is their target. The globalist target is Assad. Now, Cameron at 2013, he went to the parliament, asked if he could bomb the hell out of that country. And for once, the parliament turned round and said no. Now, we've learnt in the last few weeks that that didn't matter one jot, because the pilots from the British RAF have been carrying out literal false flags, because they've been flying under the American and the Canadian flags to bomb targets within Syria. But what they're doing now is they're using this very emotionally charged picture and a clever media campaign, and I'm actually seeing people around me saying we need to go and bomb Syria. They have totally changed the attitude of the British public, and over the course of the next couple of weeks, they are going to vote to actually carry out more airstrikes. But Ambassador, I'm glad you mentioned the fact about Russia, because Russia are now fighting alongside the Syrian Arab army. They've also got an air traffic control tower built for a new airstrip to ship in even more troops. They've got Navy vessels on the way with equipment and manpower. And we've seen John Kerry. The hypocrisy in this stinks. He came out yesterday and warned Russia about aiding Assad in the fight against ISIS. But isn't that what the West say they're in Syria for? To fight ISIS? It's ridiculous. You could not make this up. But at the same time, we mustn't lose sight of the fact that these people have got no homes. And I've been telling people in my work who were almost moaning at the fact that for some reason they think all these people are going to come and take their jobs. But I said, well, what would you do if you didn't know at night when you went to bed whether you could even get a sleep or not? Are you even going to be alive in the morning? How can you expect people like you and me to live like that? You just can't. But then we have to actually identify the true enemy, and that is the globalist cabal at the top of this. And you mentioned Ukraine there, Ambassador. I speak to a guy in Kiev, and he's talking about the 6th wave of actual enlistment. We're talking about conscription in Eastern Europe. This is unbelievable. And they really are trying to drag us into some kind of war right now. That is my opinion, anyway.
No, what they're doing here is that this is a war is basically a terrorist war which they're facing. And I think that actually the international community, and now I don't talk about the Western, international community, which is most of the time just United States, United Kingdom. I'm talking about the whole international community needs to put sanctions on United States and United Kingdom for the crimes against humanity that they are facing. They are putting sanctions on Russia for right, left, and center without any good reasons. We need to do the same sanction things on the people behind the war machine of the cabal. That's the only way to make this thing stop. And at the same time, they are pushing forward, provoking China with explosions. It's basically the Third World War has already started, but without people even knowing. The financial World War is in full swing.
I'm sorry to butt in, but maybe you've covered this on the GoldFish Report, but we're going to have a swathe of new listeners now from the Kev Baker Show. And I was wondering, because we've been covering the fact that we think the explosions in China were direct attacks. So would you go along with that?
Yeah, 100%. Because the thing is this way, is that it's not an accident. And the problem is that the Chinese government is doing absolutely their best to cover up this whole story. I was watching today that they wanted to do a school and a park there with all the cyanide and things in it. I mean, we have to wake up Okay, I understand that China do not want to admit that they are under a physical attack because that forces them into other actions. Okay, but I think that it was not without a reason why you had these boats outside the coast of Alaska when Obama was there. And we have also other problems here now with the asteroid. For first long of the asteroid was coming in over, Thailand now, and we have other ones that coming to close to us in the next coming days. And it's time for humanity to actually come together here, because they have now created this apocalypse type of scenes which they've been planning for years. And under this time where we're having, major obstacles for the planet in mind. So basically they're doing everything they can to create disorder. And in the hope of disorder, they hope basically also to financially collapse the financially strong countries in Europe too. So this is a very smart plan that they're doing. And we need to dismantle this plan of depopulation and actually put the people that are responsible under sanctions and having them paying for it. I think that would be the best solution, and I think this is the only time, if they would listen to me, for the first time in world history, use the United Nations to actually put a stop for this nonsense. We need to unify all the nations and let the international community be more than just United States and Great Britain.
Well, if I could just interject here, I mean, aren't we talking about a process, though? I mean, this is not a quick fix. Putting sanctions, we have to try these people and find them guilty first, because I don't think...
No. United Nations didn't trial Russia if they're guilty for anything. They just unified with the European brothers there and just smashed them with financial without any reasons. Okay, we can do the same thing on them. Okay. So and also, by the way, people doesn't realize that financial sanctions is an act of war. This is an act of war, okay? So the thing is this way, we need to do something here now to put stop for this madness. We cannot just sit silently and consenting to it as a group of goldfishes and a group of goldfish ball, and we don't care because we just get some food here so we can eat and shit, and then some stimulation, we shoot some little boy on the beach. No, this is not enough for us. We want to jump out of this goldfish bowl into the little sea of knowledge and basically force our ways on these scavengers, okay? And that's the only way we can do it. We cannot sit still anymore. We need to react internationally. Nations needs to come together. The nations that is being victims for these crimes needs to come together. It needs to be a hard discussion in the United Nations Security Council. At the same time, we also need to actually make the international community really be heard, not United States and United Kingdom, which they consider the international community, but I mean rest of all these hundreds of countries that's a part of the United Nations. And also, for example, when you hear things like the Arab countries, we don't want them because they're psychologically ill. What about Europe? What about America? They made them psychologically ill, so maybe we should take care of them. But do we have a possibility to do so? We need to look at it. I had a solution for this problem 4 years ago. No one did anything about it. We can still do it. But we need the people to come together and do what we need to do to save Europe and to save these people's lives.
Well, there is a meeting coming up at the UN just, I think, in a week. And so, if the UN, is listening and they want to hear our message, what exactly, I mean, you've already said what you thought they should do. Is there anything that you want to add to that? Because this would be a good time before they meet.
They know very well when I talk about the city of refuge. We have cities already, empty cities in different parts of the world, in Africa and other places, in China also, in Russia. We could actually put all these people into the cities. I think this is what we need to do. We need to take care of them somewhere else. We need to do DD on these people to find out who they are. Why are they here? What's the reason why they're here? And give them a place where they can live in their own communities and try to find their ways out from there. And we can do that now. The cities are empty, the cities are in place. Let's move them there until they can come back to their own country, and let the Russian and the Chinese community in the other world, maybe the United Nations, actually go in and put a stop to the nonsense in Syria and Iraq.
as if it wasn't bad enough to be a refugee, unfortunately, there's some rioting that has been occurring. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Or maybe Kev wants to comment on that, or the ambassador?
I'll let the ambassador go on that.
No, no, it's a lot of rioting, and you can see there that these people are not here in a friendly, kindly manner. Okay, you can see that they were resisting to take things, they destroyed things, they're fighting, and we have also rioting already with immigrants that already have been here for a long time. And I think it's going to be more clashes, and that's exactly what they were planning and hoping for. And also, people doesn't realize that to treat an emergency refugee costs about €3,000 per day. Okay, that's going to cost us a lot of money.
Yeah,
now,
this is all part of the plan, Ambassador. I think they're actually trying to overwhelm us in the EU right now. And I think we would be naive to think that the real ISIS out there, because there are proper Islamic terrorists out there, not all of them know they're controlled at the very top. They will be taking full advantage of this situation. And we can be sure there'll be Taliban, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, whatever name you want to put on them. But this all plays into the globalists' hands.
And, you know, sometimes you have to wonder, as we know they've been trying to incite a World War III for quite some time from all different angles. And this has been going on for a while. So it makes you wonder if, you know, this is part of their strategy towards that direction. But there are a couple of things that we have to look at here. Number one is we certainly have to take care of these human beings, these people. I mean, this is the worst refugee crisis since World War II in Europe. And these poor people have to be taken care of. And even if their home is rebuilt, it's not going to be the same when they go back. It just has to stop. But at the same time, there are the people at the, we'll call it the top, who are pulling the puppet strings, who are orchestrating all these things that must stop. And as the ambassador mentioned, a couple of families that should take responsibility, absolutely. The Bushes, the Clintons, and on. People who are should be tried for more than, you know, crimes to humanity, war crimes. But I think they should also take responsibility with sweat equity. You know, a lot of them have so much money that I'm not sure just paying their money, how much that would really put a ding or damage them. But I'd really like to see them putting in some sweat equity and taking care of these, you know, these refugees themselves. Anyway, it's just a very sad situation. And I have another comment that I'll add
you know, in Europe right now, Sherry, I mean, you make a brilliant, all your points are brilliant, but in Europe right now, the media, obviously on behalf of the elites, they really are trying to almost drive a wedge. It's like an Islamophobia. It's a clash of civilizations. It really, really is. And a lot of people are really buying into it. And even some of those who you would think maybe are awake, even they are getting hoodwinked by what is going on right now. And they're buying into them and us scenario. And this is exactly what they want.
You wonder what you believe.
Go ahead, Sanj.
Hi, Kev. Just on that point, the other day we talked about on the GoldFish Report that the places they're bombing, right, Aleppo and places like that, it's a lot of Christians there, right? And this is what people don't see. That they don't see the truth. We keep talking about this whole Islamophobia, but they're bombing the crap out of the Christians, the ancient Christians that have lived there for centuries. Right? So people are not seeing that's a...
Sanj, it's almost sometimes when I look at that and when we see the media saying how they're ripping down the ancient temples, it almost feels to me as if it's like getting ready for the new age almost, ripping down the icons of ages gone by in preparation for their new age. I know that sounds maybe a bit metaphysical, a bit occult, but there's something to it. The media focus on things for a reason. And a lot of people, Sanj, don't realise that before all of this, well, faux uprising, because there never was an uprising, that actually Muslims, Christians, Jews, they worshipped all in the one temple. They didn't even have separate places. They all went together. Nobody really appreciates that Assad was one of the most secular and inclusive despots in the Middle East.
And he was. And I think this is where, when we created these walls to divide the religions, in the shadows, these shadow people have been working and doing the work in basically controlling people. Because, like we talk about the silent jubilee, well, we are in silent World War III. I mean, this is the first war that's a world war, because it's not in one country, so we can't just say it's a country war. It's actually across entire world, like in China and Russia and Ukraine.
Because we could say it's also been waged in cyberspace right now as well as the cold sanctions and the slow build-up. We see so many different levels to it.
And also, don't forget that actually Syria was one of the countries that was also not a part of the central bank system of the cabal. Okay, so it has also an underlining thing. They wanted to get rid of all the banks that is not a part of the same cabal banking system. Okay, and they succeeded there with trying to get rid of Assad. They're trying to get rid of Iran and North Korea. This is the three only countries that was not a part of that structure. And they were also, of course, the axis of evil. You know, and in reality, we have a true axis of evil, and that's actually United States, United Kingdom, and Israel. And so I think it's very important for us to see the face of the real tyranny, not the tyranny that some in the media wants to present to us. You know, when they put the thing, oh, they have chemical weapons in Syria, he removed it. He had consent on everything that people wanted him to do, thanks to Putin. And Putin did not receive any peace prize. Some other people did that had nothing to do with it. Now the thing is this way, it's time now for us, okay, to actually go in and do something proper in United Nations. That the family and everyone else put the pressure on the money, and that we will commit to do what's right as long as you people surrender. And this is, we'll go back again to the remit and surrender, okay? Also, Lisa, would you want to introduce our new guest that came in?
Let's take a look. Oh, here we have our friend Steve, who's also part of our Global Mission of Peace. And Steve is in Europe right now, in Dresden, I believe. And he's had some interesting experiences firsthand traveling through Europe, and what he's experienced with regards to the refugees themselves. Welcome, Steve.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're all good. Could you tell us about what your experiences have been traveling through Europe?
Well, I was in the south of Europe, actually, for, say, the last 10 days, and got back to Vienna. And I was a bit cut off from the whole situation. But as soon as I got back to Vienna, of course, I realized that this whole thing with the child on the beach came up, and there's a change in tune, because before I left, in the news in Austria, in any case, they were basically selling fear. They were trying to, there was an overflow of, let's say, the refugees and the camps that were there and not far from Vienna. And there were big news reports, and people were a bit up in arms about it and afraid. So after this child, the image of the child came about, I realized a completely different story was put in the news. There was more sympathy. They had Caritas, the head of Caritas, on the television. They had him talking about, they had pictures of all the food that was given, all the clothes that were given. So, humanity was pulling together. They're putting forward the positive side. Now, yesterday, I traveled from Vienna to Dresden via Prague by train. And it was very interesting, because as soon as we entered, because the news stories were that the Hungarians were not allowing anybody to stay. So they were pushing it, shunting all the people to Austria, and the Austrians were then shunting people to other countries within Europe. So the story was that on the train, as I arrived in the first station in the Czech Republic, there were security people, there were politicians, there were camera crews on the platform in this godforsaken country town, and they were all waiting. And the policemen came through the train and searched. They found nobody. There was nobody on the train, and that was repeated basically to a lesser extent as soon as I entered the first German station after the Czech border. So and I'll add further. Okay, that's the first thing that happened. Then just tonight, I was working at the opera, and while we were rehearsing for an opera, we heard outside this right-wing party, Pegida, here in Germany, and they were having a huge demonstration with banners and neo-Nazis, anti-neo-Nazis, everything you can imagine. It was absolute chaos. We could hear them chanting outside. So it was like Germany in the 30s. So it's obviously there are several issues going on here. We have the issues of a slight change of tune where the humanity is pulling together, and then the other side is where the fear porn that's going on in the media is flaming people to go on the streets. That's the two things I saw.
If I can ask Steve something.
Right ahead.
Hi, Steve.
Hi.
Welcome. We saw something in the news about the refugees coming into Germany and all the Germans there at the train platform with their arms out.
Yes.
If you know what I'm talking about. And of course,
yes.
Me seeing that, of course, it makes you feel hopeful, and we have to stand up for our fellow, our fellow brothers and
Human
sisters.
beings. That's right.
How does that fit into the sort of propaganda that you're mentioning right now, please?
Well, as you're well aware, everything that we see in the media is a soundbite. It's a slice of reality that's being showed to us. What's really going on is hard to fathom. But I think basically from what I know, humanity. Okay, your question is, what's the feeling? I guess that's what your question is. Look, I've been getting slivers of news here and there, so I can't really say either, but all I'm saying is that I see a change of tide, that even the media is now pushing the humanitarian side rather than just the fear side. So I think it could be that there's two camps that are maybe, I don't know what's going on in the media, but I'm just saying what I see here as a change in events and feeling. That's all I can say.
Well, I said at the top of the show that there was two sides to this. I mean, there is the unfortunate humanitarian crisis that has resulted. There are in this mix of refugees, there certainly are humans. I mean, there's regular humans. They're all humans. They're regular citizens. But there's and of course the children, and of course there's been other children, as the ambassador said, who have been killed by like that little baby in Donbass. I mean, I just wanted to wrap my arms around him and hold him and never let go, because a baby should never, ever, ever be. I just can't even imagine. It's, as a mother, this is very hard for me as a woman to see a little vulnerable child like that. But this is, I think that the other side, as the ambassador was talking about, and as Kev was talking about, is really they're using this image as propaganda to justify a war in Syria. And that's as if it wasn't bad enough that we have this poor little boy on the beach, okay? And there's many poor little boys everywhere who have been killed, little girls, people been killed. Really, the innocence of life is really so senseless and meaningless. But we have to face the fact, as the ambassador was saying, that maybe some of these refugees that are coming in are trained militants, and that they're there to destabilize the area, destabilize Europe. And you really have good against evil here. You have dark against light. You really have this. And I think, as you want to talk about prophecies, the ambassador said, you really have this unfolding of the dark against light here. Yeah. And, I think that image might help push us to the light more than to the dark winning, because that's really captivating the hearts of humanity. And that's what we have to do. And if humanity can help to put pressure on their governments to go to the UN and push sanctions, because this is it for us on this planet. I mean, I think we're really coming into our last frontier, our last battle of whether or not humanity is going to win or lose. And I really think, that this is, you want to call it World War III, or maybe the pretext to World War III. We hope it doesn't develop into that. But I think we have to realize that we really have to do something, because at least in Europe, it's at your front door now. As I spoke about in our last GoldFish report, by the time it comes to your front door, it's too late to do anything about it. So what we have to do is we have to act now. And what you're seeing is an escalation, Steve, because it's not just the refugees that people are being up in arms about. It's kind of spilling over into whoever has a beef about something. It's time to come out, and which is really not a good sign, because that's showing that there's really going to be some chaos. There's chaos. It's not, to me, it's not a good sign. I'm not sure, but what do you think about that?
You're absolutely right. It's being used by everybody. As I saw on the platform in the Czech Republic, the politician was there, had all the cameras there. He was calming down the public. He was going to, if there was somebody on the train, he was going to show them being carted off. And as there was nobody on the train, you could see him talking there. I couldn't get through the glass. I wouldn't have understood anyway. But you could understand with sign language is everything's fine. They're not coming in. He was using it to his advantage. It's the same here on the streets. As I was walking back, I was walking past, all sorts of types coming back from this huge demonstration that was just, scenes from the 30s. I tell you, it was just really incredible. It just went to your core. So we're feeling the unrest on the streets here is palatable. That's especially in the east of Germany, the old east. So yeah, it's definitely being used as propaganda by all sides. So I think that the hope that I have is that the human side, as I when I saw this image of this boy on the beach, I remembered the turning point of the Vietnam War, when the black and white photo came of the napalm village of the children coming out. That changed the tide of the war. That people understood these are real humans. These are not just numbers. These are humans that are being killed like us. And that's what I think needs to happen here as well.
Right. We have Sanjay. We have a few people to get to with some comments and questions, and we're going to start with Sanjay.
Actually, we have. Okay, I was going to say we haven't heard from Radagast yet.
No,
I
was going to say.
I'm going by hands that are up.
Okay.
I'm going by the hands that are up.
Hey, Steve, as the ambassador and Kev Baker have already said, you remember we've already gone through this in Australia, stop the boats and all this stuff, kids overboard, the whole propaganda stuff. That was just a trailer for the feature film that's happening in Europe right now. Yep. Same as in the financial world, when we did the Iceland and Greece for the whole world financial crisis to come. It is, like you just said, they're taking the fear porn down a tone, and they're bringing the humanitarian up a tone, so then fear porn hasn't worked all around the world to get Assad out of the way that they want to take out, as Ambassador said about the axis of evil, and that's always been the case. Mm-hmm. So they're now using the humanitarian phase to get people getting the mothers and the fathers awake and everyone and the whole thing, so they can get that emotion. It's still the same thing, right? Just at the other side, the head didn't work, so they've gone to the tail to say, well, let's use this and let's start this thing, right? Like the last push to war. And as Ambassador said, we need to call, all nations, right? What's the use calling it United Nations when we're not united? Let's get united and let's actually change something. Let's stop. As Rand Paul said the other day, that the whole problem is the source is actually us going and creating the war. I mean, these people would not be refugees. These people would not be displaced. Yes, they have their wars and internal problems, but not at this level. We've been going and bombing the houses. I mean, when we go and bomb the houses, where are they going to live? I mean, if the same thing happened to each one of our countries, we'd be in the same problem.
Okay, I'm going to let Radagast come in at this point, because Radagast has been having lots of good comments that I think he'd like to share with us, as always.
It's just, there's so many layers to this. I mean, you see obviously there's a very emotional reaction to the child on the beach. And then which is a very good human reaction. But then you see how the cynicism of how that gets played. For one thing, people in Europe now feel a little better about letting refugees in. But will the cabal use that as a way to slip in these militants that people will embrace with open arms? At the same time, they point at the little boy and said Assad did it. Matter of fact, I read last night that France is thinking about committing jets to the Syrian campaign. So, I mean, the cynicism here is deep, where you can use a little boy to slip in the like ISIS types, fanatical types, and at the same time you can say Assad is responsible for this little boy on the beach. Let's go bomb him and make it legitimate, because this is why we have a refugee crisis, when in fact it is the bombing by the cabal and the European Union and the United States that is creating the refugee crisis, and has been for since 2011 in Syria. And so, I mean, there's so many layers of cynicism, and what I want to see is whether or not the blaming of Assad for this sells to the people. Whether or not at one level they open their arms and say, "Come on in, we'll take care of you, but let's go bomb evil Assad," because then you would have two of the cabal's plans would be getting done. One is to they want to destabilize Europe with immigration. And that would, so by opening up arms, you get people to get in there easier. Plus, you could slip in troublemakers. And at the same time, you use that same boy to open up the gates of hell for Assad, because people go, oh, yes, we must do something about this. And the war they wanted with Assad, that Russia stopped by getting Assad to turn over his chemical weapons, gets restarted again. So there's a lot of cynicism here that often gets missed by the general public. And I'm hoping that they don't get sold these two different, this cognitive dissonance, and they do not, where the UK does not, the public don't suddenly change and go, yes, you can go bomb Assad. So, I mean, this is really something to keep our eyes on. And I like the fact that people open their arms, and we humans have to realize that we are not at each other. We are been pitted at each other's throats by people who create scenarios. I mean, I think part of the reason why so much of the destruction is happening to ancient sites in places like Syria and Iraq is because some of our ancient heritage is there. And from what my understanding is that Jews, Muslims, and Christians got along quite well until the Cabal in the early form started the Crusades to create division. And what you'll find in a lot of these temples, which are not quite so ancient, is you'll see the symbols of Christianity and Judaism and the crescent and the star all intermingled together. As somebody said, they worship together. And this kind of unity has to be erased from any kind of ability to perceive it. Because people might go, gee, we used to get along. When did we start going at each other's throats? And then you might start seeing who manipulated us into it. And so, I mean, this is a huge wake-up time. There's so many layers here, and it's a daunting task. And sound bites, with emotional imagery, make it all the more diabolical. And people just have to wake up to how much they are being manipulated, and be willing to do a little more thinking than most people generally are comfortable with.
Well, you know what? This is really, as we were talking about, this is really the last battle here. I think that image, as you had said before, that image of that Steve had said, the image of what I remember was the little girl, the naked girl running down the street. That's seared into my mind forever. From Vietnam, that was kind of the turning point. And I think that, again, this image can have the same effect, because what it's going to do at a time right now with all these energetic shifts and changes that are going on this planet, let's hope that we have a message of hope here, which is what we really need to have, some kind of hope. Let's hope that the energies that are increasing on the planet, let's hope that we're going in the solar system here, let's hope that this image does the same thing, and it helps to raise people's compassion, raise their vibration, raise their frequency. And when the frequency is this high, the dark can't exist. I mean, they can't exist, and they only exist in lower vibration frequencies. They can't exist in higher vibration frequencies. Let this be where the light wins. Let this be the time in which the light overcomes the dark and on this planet. And I think the ambassador and Kev had a very excellent idea about putting sanctions on the people who are responsible for this. And I think that we need to encourage the UN to take the responsibility. Now, really, we lost faith in the UN when they allowed George Bush to go into Iraq, and Tony Blair to go into Iraq without valid circumstances. We haven't addressed that. The UN hasn't come back and tried to make amends for that, knowing that there were no weapons of mass destruction there. The UN really should, kind of has a public relations nightmare on its hand, because it looks completely impotent as an entity, as an organization. It looks impotent. It looks like it's just, basically serving the highest payer. So it just absolute politics and without any regard for.
Lou, do you ever feel that sometimes they're almost trying to look inept, almost as if they could justify getting rid of the UN in favour of something else that they have up their sleeve? Because really, when they're so obviously, overtly rubbish at everything they are meant to stand for, then it makes me wonder, and we should use this as a line in the sand, as a benchmark for the people over all the mistakes they've made in the past. They now have a chance to redeem themselves, to actually bring the real criminals to court, like you say.
Well, isn't there the World Court? I mean, when the UN fails to do its job, then who holds the UN accountable? And that has to be the people at some point. It has to be us. I don't know about the World Court, but the World Court is the place to handle some of these matters. Again, but if every single major entity on the planet is completely corrupted, then humanity's done. I can't imagine if we can't hold these people accountable, then we never will. We have to start holding them accountable now, because this is the final fight. I think this is humanity's final fight.
I know most of us understand here on the GoldFish Report, but most people on the planet, I don't think, understand that most of the wars, if not all of them, have been orchestrated. There's been the Wizard of Oz behind the scenes, pulling the levers and inciting people against each other for a particular agenda that maybe we don't see. And it could be for oil, it could be for different reasons. But almost every, if not every war has been orchestrated behind the scenes. But on another note, what I'd like to share is I just came back from Hong Kong and China recently on a mission with the True Vision of Peace group. And I have to say that my one experience there that was most meaningful to me, and it almost sort of makes me feel emotional to think about it, is while I was there, like groups of us people would be traveling around and maybe we had to find our way. And I would go to, always seeming to be the right person who was like a guardian angel, and ask them a question: do you speak English? And then ask them, to help us find our way. And it was so amazing, the people who were so helpful. But that is humanity. That is really, I think, the core and the heart of the people, not the people above, the very small 1% who's trying to orchestrate war and fear and all that. But, these people who helped from their heart, they went way out of their way. And of course, it was the American way. My group behind me was saying, well, offer them something, offer them some money. And I'm like, that doesn't really feel right, but okay. And they'd be like, no, we don't, no, of course not. But I have such confidence in humanity. And I know that we, the 99 percenters, it is time for us to stand up and do something. And like Randy Kramer said the other day, get your list of things that you think need to change in the world and start checking off the boxes and do something. Because each one of us, I know, one person can make a difference on the planet, in the universe, such as the ambassador and each one of us here. But I just want to give my root for humanity.
That's great. Ambassador, do you have any comments that you'd like to make, since we've had quite a bit of a dialogue and you've been patiently waiting? Is there any comments that you wanted to make on anything we've just presented regarding Europe? I have you, I think I have you muted. Okay. This is live. There we go.
Hello. Yeah. No, like I stated before, this discussion, I think, has been coming to our end. I thank everyone that has been on the thing. And I hope and pray that, the world community would take this as a great warning, because I believe with other things that's coming our way in the next coming days, with this crisis already on the field, it's going to create tremendous chaos all over the place. And it is the time now to actually bring the whole thing, okay, back to China. Now it's a whole thing. I'm talking about the United Nations. It's now time to take the shift and change and move that office to another country and move it away from the country which actually wages wars on their own citizens. And I think it's important for us now to stand for right and stand for sanity, and basically make sure that the people that is committing the crimes will be held accountable. It's still a time for them to remit and surrender and do the right thing for humanity. And I hope at the meeting we're going to have at the United Nations will come to good conclusions, and that this thing is not just a part of the depopulation agenda plan that they've been having for all these years. With that, I want to say God bless you to everyone, and thank you for me. If anyone else has something to say, last words, please feel free.
Steve, do you want to share some, messages of hope here? Do you see? Can you
Yes.
see some things that you can? That
Yes,
humanity...
I do. Look. Okay, maybe I also know only a small slice of the population here, but I mean, look, people are basically good at heart, and I think if we're not manipulated, allow ourselves to be manipulated by the media, by bad news, by bad ideas, then I think basically people will react in the right way. One more point I'd like to make as well. I think the ambassador mentioned the last time, there's lots of space in Europe. And there was, in fact, an article in a German newspaper only 3 weeks ago saying that some of the smaller towns in northern Germany are empty, and they're actually inviting people in to live in these towns. And I know from Italy as well. In Italy, the villages, the country towns are empty. They've got only a few hundred people left in each of them. There's plenty of space. It's just a matter of perception in the head, and that's all it is. That's what I like to say. There's hope.
Thanks, Steve. Let's go, Sanjay. Did you have some closing comments you'd like to make, Sanjay? You're muted, also. So we have to, there we go. There we go. One more time.
Yes, yes, it is. Like the ambassador said, it's, I think, time to remit and surrender for some of the people. And once that happens, I do see a good future for everyone because, there is hope at the end of the tunnel always. So we can pray and there will be a day. So,
and thanks, Sanjay. Sherry, did you have some closing comments you'd like to make?
Just for everyone to do what they can to wake up, watch out for the mainstream. And now is absolutely, we are at a crossroads on our planet, in the universe right now. And we can go one path or we can go the other. And we all know which way we want to go. So we got to pull out, I was going to say full guns, but I don't want to use that expression. We got to really pull it out now. We have to really stick together and we have to unite. That would be my message. We must unite and unify because now is our time to pull this off.
And we're going to ask Kev if he has some last words he'd like to leave with us.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure just being on with all of you with such really open, great minds. And what a fascinating time to be alive right now. It's one of the most exciting times ever. And Sherry's right, we really are on the cusp of something, but we can't let a few thousand dark Satanists hijack that. And I live in Scotland, as most people will know, and we actually had a sunny day today. It's a rare, rare thing. But I was looking at people, and the sun brings out the best in people. We all smile more. And I was thinking to myself, just like we were saying earlier, people are good at heart. We are good. And if we can detach ourselves from the manipulation that comes through the schools, the food, the water, the TV, then at heart, we are the change. And we say it on Truth Frequency all the time, but if you want to be the change, go and have a look in the mirror because the change is right there. It's within us all. And it seems horrible right now. People were talking about different layers of things. And that's all because we are at that cusp. And they're fighting so hard right now, not because they're winning, but because they see all of us waking up.
Very good. Radagast, would you like to have a few closing comments?
just for people to stop dividing themselves, forget the politics, forget the religion as far as a discussion, keep it personal, start finding ways to come together, realize that we are being separated on purpose. So let's bring ourselves together with purpose.
And I'd like to have a closing comment as well. And I just want to say that if you have children, take your babies and you hug them and kiss them and tell them you love them. And tell your brothers and tell your wives and your husbands and your friends and your mothers and fathers that you love them. Because love has to be expressed. And we have enough love on this planet to heal this planet and to heal the wounds here. And that is the most powerful force in the universe. Nassim Harriman talks about this. He's a physicist with the Resonance Project, and he talks about this. And so do lots of other scientists who talk about well, in fact, it was Albert Einstein in his letter to his daughter that was recently published and made available, that love is the most powerful force in the world, in the universe. And we're not using it properly. We're not expressing it, and we're not communicating that to people. So hug your children, kiss your babies, kiss your children, and make sure that you express that love and keep the love going, because that's really the only thing I think that's going to save us. It's through love and the expression of that love that we're really going to survive. I mean, humanity, as we have said, this is the last battle for humanity, and if we don't have enough love to save ourselves, then we're not worth saving. So with that, I want to thank all of our guests today. I want to thank the ambassador for really a very compassionate and heartfelt point of view. He presented some very interesting photographs. We can't forget about all the people who have been suffering in all of these wars, and that we have to really come together and put an end to this. So that's it for this show, this report rather, and we will see you next time.